Owl House might just be my favorite show of all time. It has some of the best episodes of television I have ever seen, like Knock 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 Hootie's Door, Ida's Requiem, and thanks to them. But not every episode is as good. There are no episodes which are straight up horrible, but just so disappointing when compared to the show's best episode. There's also a lot of debate on which is the best episode and which episodes are even good. So the only way to fix that problem is for me to provide you with my controversial takes. I have seen each episode of The Owl House at least 2 times and up to 5 times before writing this script, so I'm very familiar with each episode. We will be starting with the worst episode and work our way up to the best. Without further ado, let's start the ranking. The worst episode of The Owl House is Once Upon a Swap. There are very few episodes I want to skip on a rewatch, but that's the case with this episode. To start off, a body swap is just one of the most common tropes in fantasy slash sci-fi shows. It can be done well, like in Carpe Diem, but this is not an example of it. Each of the main characters get up to the most boring hijinks possible. Ida King gets captured, like in that episode of SpongeBob with Gary, except all the boring parts, it's just there. King and Luz gets into the most boring teenage drama, which is so self-aware, and that just makes it so more annoying. Luz Ida gets captured by the Emperor's Coven, providing for only slightly interesting plot. It was already a boring concept, and then how they resolved it was just so lazy. The only good thing that came about this episode was Hootie had a few good lines, but that's in every episode, thus cannot save this garbage heap. Really small problems isn't boring, but just below average. Shrinking, again, very common trope. I do like how they put a bit of a twist into the idea with the gang fighting in that tiny circus. Tibbles isn't horrible, but he isn't interesting in either way either. Gus feels overly mean to King in this episode, and I'm honestly rooting for King to shrink the friend because they're just being kind of jerks. Again, Hootie's funny, there are some very good gags, but this episode's mainly just boring.
I was in the throes of a malaise!
Hootie's moving hassle is very forgettable. You would think that this is an episode that it has Hootie's name in it. It's got to be good, but he is featured no more than in a normal episode. The concept, while unique, doesn't really feel executed that well. I think you could do a lot with the concept of the Owl House and Hootie turned into this Baba Yaga-esque house. It could be really cool, but it ended up just being Let's Go Bully Basha, which, like, yeah, we hate her, but what else? They get captured by demon hunters, which doesn't amount to much. And then the side plot with Ida's gambling addiction and then getting scammed by Ida. That's somewhat interesting. This is one of the first signs that Ida's getting taken advantage of due to her curse. But besides that, not really much to say. And again, it is a Tibbles episode, so maybe that says something.
Sequestered in a darkness like unto death.
I'm really mixed on Escape of the Talisman. On one hand, I could care less about losing the Bat Queen, but at the same time, King taking over the park is comedy gold. Luz feels like more than a side plot in this episode than anything. The only point of interest is Luz forming a bond with Albert, but that doesn't feel like it's worth a whole episode. But King's story is very funny. King using Albeast Ida to conquer the playground it's so King. This episode is King at his highest comedically. He takes something so small, just being playing tag at a playground, and makes it into such a big deal, which is very funny. I like that snotty little kid, but if we ever do get a sequel series, I would not be surprised if that kid is the villain and takes over the Blaine Isles. King's high-pitched scream makes me laugh every time, and I just wish the Bat Queen part of the episode was cut down, and I don't know what they'd fill the time with, but I don't know.
Ah! I always forget you're there!
I forget I'm here too! Boop!
The Intruder is an important, yet boring episode. Here, we have Luz learn the infamous light glyph, find out about Ida's curse, but it also feels super slow. Not many of the jokes or gags really hit this time around. The tone also feels so out of place in this episode. I feel like it tried to go for a horror vibe, which we never really see in the rest of the show, and the horror is so toned down that they really should have chosen a different tone. Luz learning the light glyph was really fun to see, and I loved at the end where she was drawing a bunch of them. We see that a lot through the show, and when people learn the glyphs, and it's always really cool. Episode isn't bad, but even those plot significance, it's just pretty forgettable.
I'm gonna bake that kid into a pie.
I was disappointed on rewatch to learn that I Was a Teenage Abomination. The first episode with Amity was so boring. Somehow, even though we met Amity, Principal Bump, and all the other amazing Hexide characters, the episode was kind of bad. The main problem is that this episode doesn't really feel like the Hexide we meet in later episodes. It feels so hostile instead of welcoming, and all the characters inside aren't very good. It is pretty boring when you watch it. Even in Convention, where Amity is still an antagonist, she feels like a good character, but here she just feels like a normal bully character, and we don't see any of her normal self leaking through. It felt more like the episode with young Ida than this Hexide that we know, and I don't know, it doesn't really work.
Who? Wait, has Thalamiel been your last name this whole time?
Funnily enough, someone ventured, someone framed. The next episode at Hexide isn't much better. I have heard that Disney forced the inclusion of a magical school into the show, and maybe that's why these first two episodes with Hexide are so bad. To be clear, I think this one is miles ahead of Teenage Abomination, but that isn't saying much. I love the concept of the detention pit, although the breaking out part was boring. Concept, very cool. We get the first appearance of Matt Thalamiel, who was pretty good. The rest of the main plot, it was pretty boring. I did like Ida's side plot with Bump, who was actually fun in this episode. I like seeing Ida work hard to get the best future for Luz, which was inspired by Hootie. We love Hootie. This episode, it isn't horrible, but it still isn't really great.
Or you can scam for me.
Keeping Up Appearances is the worst episode of Season 2 on this list, and I would have thought that the show could really get their consistency down by Season 2, but they didn't. This episode isn't really bad, it's just really frustrating. Gwendolyn's story was a good idea, but the scam felt far too obvious. I really like the idea of Ida's mom being neglectful in all the most important ways, trying to save her daughter, but Gwen almost feels too stupid. I like that Lilith was feeling ignored, and that was sad to watch, but good writing. There isn't too much to say about this episode, though. It was just mainly annoying to get through, just seeing Gwendolyn get scammed and being so oblivious, and just the fact that it's in between so many good episodes, better episodes.
I can learn magic. I can be a witch. I won't be the dummy in the principal's office anymore.
The First Day is this show's final stinker of an episode. It isn't bad, but just very cliche. It is the classic misunderstanding episode, and you know that is always great. Luz has her most forgettable plot in the show in this episode. Conflict feels forced, though it is where we get the introduction of the multiple tracks, and I like that aspect. King's side plot, though, very funny. King as a teacher sounds so weird, but it's so funny. I loved that he wrote this highly complex formula for stealing pies, and he became one of the students' favorite teacher. Also, my favorite part of the episode is just the 10 seconds of Amity we get in this episode. Just her talking to herself about Luz single-handedly makes this episode bearable to get through.
I don't know, I always do that. I am a little weirdo.
The first episode of the show, A Lion, Witch, and a Warden, gets too much hate. It is honestly pretty good. It introduces the world, characters, and basic premise in a solid way. The stuff in the human world was good, and the first impressions of the Boy in Isles was great. I didn't like Ida's introduction, though. It felt very underwhelming to me, but that was about the only part I didn't like. I loved King's introduction. Warden Wraith was a cool character. I liked the whole prison break and the message of weirdos stick together. Maybe it's cliche, but I really liked it. The fact that King's crown wasn't real, but was like a burger queen. Just something to make him feel good. It was a really nice setup for the tone of the show. It wasn't the best episode ever, but if you think about the first episode of Amphibia, or even Gravity Falls, it was solid. And I mean, compared to all the ones before, yeah, it's good.
Maybe if you just learn the basics, like Lou said.
I don't have time for basics.
Adventures in the Elements isn't nearly as good as I remember. It's a fun episode, but I think I mainly like it for sympathetic kind Amity. But after that becomes the norm, it just feels like a normal episode. Don't get me wrong. Good episode. Luz learns a new glyph, and we see more of her inner desire to be accepted by other kids. Seeing her work together with Amity is always fun. And Amity, Ed, and M, they're all good here. Again, King's side plot good. It isn't anything too special, but seeing King and Hootie work together in the end and see them almost bond was nice, and then Hootie ruined it. Also, I think that this is the first time Hootie was actually an important part of an episode, so that's nice. Again, this episode, it's nothing too special, but it is one of the many times, one of the many episodes of this show that are just fun while adding plot details at the same time.
Wow! Skulls, bones. I can really see this place helping you with your taxidermy hobby.
Am I the only one who likes Witches Before Wizards? My sister thinks it's the worst episode of the show. Episode 2, do you like Witches Before Wizards?
I hate witches before wizards.
Bye. Oh, but I really like it. It feels like a second pilot to the show, and it has some really strong messages. I really like this one because us, the audience, just as Luz, has built up this idea of what fantasy is. When we hear fantasy, we picture this medieval world that we see all too often, and this episode just goes against the trope. In this episode, we see that the Owl House isn't your formulaic fantasy that we've all come to expect. The world of the Boiling Isles originally seems so harsh and cruel, but if you take the time, we can start to see its inner beauty. And the theme of choosing yourself instead of having others need to choose you, finding your own worth, all of that. It's so important, and it works really well. This episode was so necessary to get the show right, and I think it works at that.
This is where we play a game called Grudge Bee.
The ball can bite you, and the rules are nonsense, but it's still kind of fun.
Moonlight Witches is fun, but overall, it's an unimportant episode. Here, we get the parallel of both Luz and Ida playing Grudge Bee for some reason. For Luz, it is to help Willow, and for Ida, it is for her freedom. The Ida side of the story is quite forgettable, besides King's Armor of Intimidation. I love that. Actually, wait. I ordered from the Gravity Falls website, and I got this as a freebie, so that's nice. Yeah, King's Armor of Intimidation, very funny. This episode could be skipped or cut out without really changing anything, but I really do like Luz's part of the episode. I love that Willow sticks up for herself to Luz in this episode. Luz always tries to help, and it's sweet, but it can be reckless, and the fact that Willow stands up for herself is something I am really happy that the writers included. We get Basha, who was sufficiently annoying in this episode. I say that in a good way. I liked how Basha's friends were friendly to Luz and Willow instead of just being your cold-hearted goons, the mean girls. And after Grom, seeing Amity's crush intensify, it is fun to watch.
Now keep reading. I've been sucked into your awful fandom. Oh.
One of the show's most random episodes, while still being incredibly fun, is Sense and Insensitivity. It is really funny, with a lot of good gags, and it's just enjoyable. Everything with King and the writing of Ruler's Reach was so fun to watch. I loved seeing when King threw out all of Luz's ideas when she left the room for like 2 minutes. It was so funny, and how they handled the crunch time as being literal, that was hilarious. I also really liked the side plot with Ida and Lilith. Lilith could be quite annoying in season 1, but I actually liked her in this episode. Seeing the Clawthorn sisters form an uneasy alliance was a nice setup for Lilith's redemption, and the best part of the episode is the sisters just beating up that scammer guy. I really liked that.
Your mysterious father, who didn't even stick around to watch you hatch.
I don't know what to say about Echoes of the Past. On the one hand, we get Lilith and Hootie, not to mention a lot of cool world building, backstory for King, but it's not that exciting to watch for me. King's backstory might be the most boring side plot of season 2. While it's good to know, it just feels out of place with all the other storylines going on that I just care more about. The episode's good, but especially for season 2, I think it could be better.
Wait, were we just having a tea party in Animal Jammies?
What happens in the montage stays in the montage. No.
Any Sport in Storm is a really fun episode. I like seeing Hunter trying to be a normal kid. We can really see the effect that Bellows' brainwash had on him, but we also get hope for a happy future for Hunter with Darius, who's just such a fun character. I love Darius so much. I wish we saw more of him. I think the whole sports team idea works much better in this episode than Moonlight Witches, possibly because it introduces a bunch of smaller characters, and of course, there's a bigger team, so the team feels more like a team instead of the 3 friends we always see as just friends. I really liked seeing Willow become a leader, and I liked her a lot in this episode. The side plot with Luz and Amity finding the Azora author and making theories was fun, but it was also really forgettable and could have been skipped. Any Hunter episode is fun for me, but seeing him becoming a normal kid, I liked that. It was fun.
Hey, come on, give it a rest, you two.
Yeah, listen to your rat.
Edge of the World is another King backstory episode, but I liked this one a lot more than the other. Seeing the life outside of the Boiling Isles was really fun, and the Titan Trappers were cool, and I wish we saw a bit more of them. Their culture seems interesting, especially with their worship of the Collector, as they call him, the Grand Huntsman. The twist with King being the Titan makes a lot of sense, while being a nice surprise. I also like that Bill, I really liked him, but I found it funny that Bill was trying to kill Alex Hirsch's character. King's development in this episode is quite good, but overall, it's just a pretty good episode, even if it does have a boring plot.
Yes, I think this will do nicely. Forget fire, I've got a greater force to unleash.
Understanding Willow is a turning point for the show. Amity is becoming more and more central to this story, but this episode is the last episode of her redemption and her introduction to the main cast. The idea of making photos of memory is cool, but also kind of stupid because it's way too dangerous, as we see in this episode. I really liked the way of doing a flashback episode we saw here, where it gives our main character something to do, while also giving us backstory at the same time. This was the first episode where I actually cared about Willow, and seeing all her built-up rage was great. I really wish we got more of Gus interviewing Hootie. We could have just seen a whole episode of that. I don't know. But still, what we did get of that was legendary. Hootie's song. Here a hoot, there a hoot, hoot hoot.
Hey, we're back. And we bought some, cars.
Oh Titan, Where Art Thou is one of the weirdest episodes of the Owl House. It has a lot of great character moments, but might be the only episode of the Owl House which can't stand alone. The Owl House has always been serialized in some shape or form, but still episodic, and this just feels far too extreme into serialization. Either way, the episode it's still enjoyable. I really liked King's joyride with Steve after Edge of the World. It was nice just for a chance for King to slow down and be with his thoughts and how he just wants normal life as compared to Lilith, who is pampering King. The main plot with Luz going to get Francois was fine, but then again, forgettable. Luckily though, the subplot did provide for one of the most emotional scenes, being Ida telling Rain to protect her children, especially after what we saw in Ida's Requiem. It's such an emotional scene, and while this episode is really good, its reliance on other episodes weighs it down a lot.
Oh, is there some sort of enchanted article of clothing that could sort this out for me?
Well, there used to be, but...
Oh, I'm so excited!
And now, I feed!
Agony of a Winch starts as your regular standard episode, but then the episode is just like, wow. I liked Luz in the castle, but it wasn't anything too special. Something that was when Hootie beat up the guards, one of the best Hootie moments, and top 10 anime fights. Put it on the list, Watch Mojo. I liked seeing King and Ida trying to do something nice for Luz, and then King with the cake, and the cake is Luz trying to do something nice for Ida. The things like this is why I really think they're a great family, because they're all trying to help each other out without expecting anything back. Then we get the amazing battle at the end of the episode with Lilith versus Ida. I loved the convention duel, but this was just, it was next level. The emotion behind it, because one, the sisters fighting, two, finding out that Lilith cursed Ida, all of it. Mwah! The ending is so tragic. This episode is just great.
Wait, hold on.
The Coven's against the throne.
We talked about this. You promised.
AKA...
I did not agree to this name!
The Cat.
Funnily enough, the next episode is Clouds on the Horizon Part 1 of the Season 2 finale. I think this episode is better just because we have already had a few episodes setting up, like we talked about earlier, for what seemed to be this final battle. And this episode just feels like it's part of that battle instead of just a setup episode. Although we don't see the actual final battle being at the Titan's Head, the preparations and Luz's mission to rescue Amity did feel just as important. There was a lot of emotion in this episode, unlike Agony of a Witch. The action and emotion was present all the way through, not just at the end, just to find its spot, even though none of the individual scenes in this episode are as good as that ending.
You wouldn't want me harming your precious Talisman, would you? Oh, but then again, I don't care what you want. Goodbye.
But when you get past the shock value, Hollow Mind, it isn't anything too special. That isn't to say it's bad, but on my first watch, I thought it was the craziest thing ever. It was so good, but after seeing it 2 more times, when you know the twists, it just isn't as crazy and that shock value dissipates. With that said, I don't think this episode is good for its twist. I think why it's good is its emotion. One of the most emotional scenes in the episode is Luz saying, "No, you're just Bellows." We could have had predicted almost everything beforehand, especially that Bellows is Philip, but the part of the episode that makes it shine is how the characters react to the information. That is why I like this episode.
I challenge you to a witch's battle!
A witch's battle?
One of the show's just fun episodes, the most fun ones, is Convention. Something about this episode is so fun, and that for some reason makes me like it more than all the other episodes we have seen. I think the main thing is just how much we learn about the story. Here, we are first introduced to Covens, and they are very cool. Along with them comes Lilith, who isn't at her best here, but it's still somewhat interesting for us, the audience, to learn about. The duels between Amity and Luz, and then Lilith and Ida, especially that one, they were visually unique and cool. I really like Amity in this episode, and you could start to see her path to redemption and her pure intentions. She felt like an actual character, not just that mean bully. Overall, it was a very fun episode.
Say, you want to play tag? I'm it.
The next episode is For the Future. This one should be brief, as I have already made a video about this episode. Overall, pacing feels sloppy, and the focus is very messy. The stuff at Hexside with Luz's friends is almost pointless, and it feels like filler. I wish we mainly just focused on King and the Collector, because they were the best part, and we should have had a lot more. I do not like Kiki, Mora, and Basha being the villains. We are in this finale. Why are they the villains? I don't like Kiki.
Ace, here's your book. So, what'd you think? It was fine. So fine, you drew yourself with Malingale, the mysterious soothsayer?
Lost in Language, though, is so exciting to watch. NM are at their peak in this episode, and they're a bit of a downgrade in future episodes. They're such great characters, and especially when you see Yesterday's Lie and find out that Luz has kind of a fear of older kids, and then, thanks to them, of course, seeing her more in the human world, it's just so much better. I love Luz's journey to being friends with Amity here. She tries so hard in this episode, and it's a big step. The journal of Amity provides for a lot of development for her, seeing her thoughts, and even without the journal, we do find out a lot about her. Seeing Amity read to children and finding out that she likes Azora makes Amity just feel like a nicer person, even though she's not necessarily being nice. She is, but just those facts make her seems like so much of a nice person, even if, we follow it up with her getting mad. At the end of the episode, where Luz and Amity need to work together, it was great to see them as a team for the first time in the show. The Bat Baby side plot with King and Ida, it's pretty boring and makes the episode a bit worse for me, but this episode is so great for Amity's development and does a great job at that.
Are you sure you want to do this for a stuffed toy? Wouldn't you rather, I don't know, have a beach day?
Me.
Separate Tides feels distinct from a lot of the show, but it's really nice. The first half of the episode is nothing to write home about, but as soon as we get on that Selkie Damas hunt, my enjoyment skyrockets. Here we first meet the Golden Guard, and his introduction is so great. One of my favorite Hunter moments is just him playing with King in the episode, lifting up the tarp and then lowering it. That was really funny. I am really happy that the boat wasn't a trap. That would feel so cliche that, oh yes, we put on a treasure hunt because we knew you were poor, so you would come on the hunt and then we would capture you. And the fact that Hunter wasn't just trying to trap Luz, that was nice. It was just a coincidence. Good. One thing that isn't necessary in this episode, but enhances the viewing experience, is that we later find out that to make a Grimwalker, you need a Sulky Damas, meaning that in this episode, Hunter was helping Bellows find Hunter's replacement. I also like this stuff with Lilith and Hootie. It's the start of the best friendship in the show. Overall, though, even though this isn't the most necessary episode of all time, it was really fun.
Why are we stopping? Is it the Golden Guard?
Throughout the show, we get a lot of episodes of just Hunter interacting with different people in the Owl fam, whether it's Willow or Gus, Luz, and the best one is Hunting Talisman, I think. Luz and Hunter just work so well together in this episode. We get a lot of humanization for Hunter in this episode, and seeing him when he isn't the all-powerful Golden Guard it's just a cool vibe. Even though Hunter is trying to steal the Talisman, I still kind of root for him, especially since he's up against Kikimora. You know what I think about her. And we see the abuse that Hunter suffers because of Bellows. Luz's inner conflict feels really good in this episode. Throughout the show, she has always just wanted to live this fantasy life, and here the realization sinks in that she has no clue what she actually wants. Something further explored in later episodes. Overall, this episode gives some great characterization for two of my favorite characters, with a fun premise of an uneasy alliance to take things to the next level.
Joe! Not a single one of those dumb kids have gotten hurt yet.
Dumb kids? Wait. Those are my dumb kids!
Escaping expulsion, it has no right to be so good. I loved meeting the Blights and seeing Odalia's manipulative practices. We get the best principal bump comedy of him crying while defending the school from Luz and friends. I really loved seeing every way that Alador had used Abomination Goo, or whatever it is, to make really interesting weapons. And seeing that demo on Luz was chaotic in all the best ways you could want. Amity's crushing was once again so great in this episode, where instead of cowering like in Winged Like Witches, Amity just went full-on badass as she was prepared to take down her parents' whole company for her crush. And seeing Luz start to reciprocate Amity's feelings, that was good. The side plot with Lilith and Nita was fun to watch, where they were trying to make the new glyphs, and seeing more of Lilith and Hootie, so good. This episode is a delight to watch. It is fun, funny, and emotional.
Teens are probably into the same things as me, like authority, rules. Class.
Another great Hunter episode where he's teaming up with people is Eclipse Lake. If I'm correct, this is the only episode of the show where Luz just has nothing to do. She's not a main character, not even a side character really, and I'm fine with it. I love Luz, but giving the focus to other characters is great, and should have been done for the future. Amity and Hunter's relationship in this episode is so good. They both come from similar homes of manipulation, and seeing their perspectives on it was really fun. Hunter thinks that people will only care for you if you serve a purpose, and Amity, who's now in a relationship with Luz, realizes that the right people will care for you just for who you are. Hunter going insane near the end of the episode was just chilling, where he'd rather dig his grave than go back to Bellows empty-handed. It was sad to watch. Kikimora's paranoia was funny, and overall, it was just a nice change of pace for the show.
Who cares about the ripple effects?
Elsewhere and Elsewhen is such an interesting episode. We meet Philip for the first time, his younger self. I mean, it's an episode with Lilith and Luz together, which we don't get a lot of. Just the antics with Philip, we get to see his manipulation, and seeing how he becomes Bellows is really interesting. We meet the Collector, just seeing all of Bellows' formation in this episode, and how he becomes a monster, and how he already kind of is a monster without all the years of manipulation. It's really interesting. I wouldn't say this is the best episode ever, but it's just so interesting. I prefer it over Hollow Mind just because we get to see it instead. We get to understand it instead of just see it through memories. It affects our main characters.
Aw, Amity, you're the sweet potato. So...
I really enjoy Through the Looking Glass Runes. People say it feels filler, but I really like it. To me, it is lost in language, but improved in every single way. First of all, I'm happy that the library story got the bump to just being a side story. Lost in Language had the library plot drag just a tiny bit, so shortening it really works here. I really like the tension build up between Luz and Amity, and it's really cute. I find it so funny that Luz gets the library card just off camera. We all see so many episodes where it just happened that, okay, I'm going to go on a quest to get the card, and then just the fact that it happened off screen, I found that really funny for some reason. And the kiss, well deserved. The Looking Glass Runes part of the episode was also really good. I enjoyed the return of Matt Tholomew, and Bria's character and friends were fun. I love seeing the full power of the illusions in this episode, and it made Gus feel like much more fleshed out, as well as just being much more powerful. My one complaint is that we never see the Galderstones again in the show, but relics like this are usually forgotten in shows, so I can't blame the writers too much, and they said they're too powerful, but I mean, then again, Bellows.
Did you read my diary?
And they're head witch of the Bard Coven.
Stop it!
And they
Stop
also...
it, stop it. Yes! They secretly led a rebel group against the Emperor and got captured. I was there!
Oh, I didn't read that far.
I love Them's the Breaks Kid so much. Young Ida's story is so interesting, and I really wish we just got a full-on spin-off about it. Seeing her and Ray meet is such a good concept, and having Bump along for the ride, well, you just know it's gonna be great. My favorite part of the episode is Terra Snapdragon and her game of Coven versus Wild. It was so fun to see all the young witches turn on each other so quickly because there is something they need to do, like impress their parents, and that's how Bellows gets them. It gives you a feeling and understand why Bellows took over so quickly and gained so much power, and they were using kids to show, which just felt like a Lord of the Flies type situation. And the fact that Ida was the only one who didn't play the game just shows us what kind of character Ida is. My biggest problem is that Luz fell asleep during that backstory. The Luz I would know would have been attentively paying attention and taking notes. Overall, though, this episode was a great change of pace while also very relevant to the main story.
This day shall live in infamy.
King's Tide was a great finale, though not as good as True Colors. There aren't many inherent flaws in the episode, but at the same time, it feels less special than most other episodes. I enjoyed this episode a lot, but I felt like there were fewer character moments in the Owl House finales than there are in the middle episodes. Either way, though, the episode was still enjoyable with a lot of good action. I loved seeing Bellows betray everyone here. He was so close to victory, where he got arrogant and he got sloppy, and because of that, he lost. It was tragic to watch the Coven heads, even the evil ones, get betrayed due to Bellows' manipulation. The fight scene between Luz and Bellows, and then later on Luz's friends and Bellows, it looked so good with the lighting and the location, and all the different types of magic at play. And of course, the Collector twist, it was awesome. His introduction was so cool, and leaving us on that cliffhanger, it was good. The ending where Luz reunited with her mother was a great way to end off this great finale.
Illegal? Oh, we'll see about that, won't we, children?
For no good rhyme or reason, Labyrinth Runners cracks the top 10. This episode is a great way to start the final battle story arc, and this episode has a lot of great character moments. I love the character of Adrian so much, and once again, this episode shows off the raw power that illusion magic can have. Gus's panic attack was really interesting, and seeing how it even went on when he was calm, how it continued, I've heard that was accurate, so nice. I loved Hunter getting accepted by the school and Willow standing up to Amity. Both great character moments. Seeing all the Hexside students fight for their school was really epic, and it was just a blast to watch. It was really good.
Give me your skin!
Yesterday's lie wouldn't be nearly as high if it wasn't for those last 5 minutes. It was a fun episode, but those last 5 minutes, they're etched into my head. The raw emotion that they had, it was so captivating. I enjoy V, but I think she is heavily underutilized in the show, especially because she didn't show up in the finale. But even so, this episode was a great introduction. Her best line was how she's both so angry and also happy that Luz went into the Boyne Isles. And, like, wow, you can't really blame her, but wow. And conspiracy theory guy, he was kind of annoying to me. He could be funny, but it just felt like he went a tad bit too far. I did get bored whenever we flashed back to that conspiracy theory guy, but the main parts of interest in this episode were Luz, V, and Camilla. And Camilla stole the show in this episode. She had so much emotion, but the best part was her talking to Luz at the end. That scene was so good, showing that both parties were kind of at fault, and that emotion, it was just next level. I'm thinking about doing a video on this episode because there's just so much to unpack.
We saw Kikimora. She was a lot to deal with.
I can imagine.
Follies at the Coven Day Parade is the perfect breather episode after yesterday's lie. It's still heavily important, but also much calmer, and it gives us a chance to relax a bit. The premise seems like it would be a boring episode, but I really enjoyed it. Seeing how Luz was trying to make things better for Kikimora, just to prove that Luz herself can live both lives, was very interesting to watch. I also really enjoyed the scenes with Ida and Rain. Rain is such a good character, and seeing him in this episode telling Ida to go, which we later find out is to protect Ida. So potent. The scenes with Amity were also really good. One of my favorite scenes was Amity braiding Willow's hair. It was so wholesome after understanding Willow. Seeing Amity being respectful to Luz's privacy by not going on her phone was nice, instead of Amity just invading Luz's privacy. Terra Snapdragon, once again, delight to see. Hootie and King and the Bellows float, one of the most hilarious things in the show, and the ending with Bellows' face reveal was so amazing, so eerie, and it just leaves such an impact.
No, Bellows is a liar. He just wants power, and I bet dollars to donuts that he can't speak to the Titan.
Young Blood, Old Souls is a great season finale. It feels so epic and has so much emotion. The main two parts of the episode that I love are the Ida part and the Bellows part. I love Ida so much here. It feels like what we see from her in O Titan, Where Art Thou, but even more protective of her kids. Seeing her talk to Luz and thinking it would be the last time, that was so powerful. I really loved Bellows in this episode. Apparently, when this episode came out, people complained about Bellows just being another villain who lies. But when you see the full picture of the rest of the show, it makes a lot of sense here. Also, Bellows' fight with Luz is one of the coolest scenes in the show, while also being one of the most emotional. Seeing Luz give out the portal, blow it up, and then we just flash to seeing the rage in Bellows' eyes, even though there's almost no change. That was amazing. While Lula's redemption could have been handled a bit better, I am glad we got it, and when she shared the curse with Ida, that was good. This episode is such a great season finale, with a mix of being epic and emotional. And speaking of season finales,
To connect with a Talisman, you need to express your deepest wish. I never asked.
Watching and dreaming shouldn't be as good as it is. There are so many reasons this finale should have failed, but for the most part, it's solid. It isn't the best episode of the series, but it never needed to be. It wraps up the show in such a satisfying way with very few problems. I am going to keep this one short, as I already did an in-depth deep dive of this episode last week, but the episode is a lot of fun, and it's a great finale.
Do you want to go out with me? No.
During my first watch of the show, one of the episodes that caught me off guard most was Enchanting Ground Fry. Going into the show, I knew there was great gay representation. No, sir, I've heard that. And I guessed it would have been Luz and Amity as I started to watch the show. But having that knowledge, this episode was still so shocking. The episode started off just like any other, but it quickly spiraled into greatness. Without just talking about the dance itself, Grom is such an interesting concept. The idea of a fear demon, which you need to fight in front of the whole school, it's so intriguing. It's a great way to flesh out the character by both seeing their fear and their approach to how they choose to fight it. And of course, here we see both Luz and Amity's reactions to it. It was great. Something I love so much is that both of them, they couldn't face their fear. But it is Luz that lets Amity defeat Grom. Amity's fear is Luz's rejection, but when Luz invited Amity to dance, there was nothing else to scare Amity, and because of that, Luz was an integral part of defeating Grom, even if she couldn't defeat it herself. The dance was so beautiful, and even though we knew what the note said, when we saw both of the pieces on the floor together, that was a crazy moment. The side plot with King, it was fun enough, but there was one Hootie moment that I just need to mention. Amity beating up Hootie is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. The joke is set up perfectly, and it is executed even better. Being a standard episode, Enchanting Ground Fry shows what a regular episode can be and what it can achieve. But that isn't it for our favorite tube demon, because number 4 is...
Worship me! Kill that monstrosity! Not the first time I've heard that!
Knocking on Hootie's door. This is my most rewatched episode of the Owl House, and for a very good reason. This episode is both hilarious, emotional, and impacts the story. The episode is held together by Hootie just trying to help everyone out, while failing and succeeding at the same time. Hootie is such a funny character, and here he is showcased perfectly. His facial expressions, voice, and just things he says are mixed in such a way where I can't drink or eat anything without choking from laughter in this episode, thanks to Hootie! The character moments are also just so good. King's health class, Ida's dream, and the Tunnel of Love, they're so distinct in tone, but they work so well together. I have a whole video talking about this episode, but I can still talk about it for ages. It is so good, and we have Hootie to thank for that, because he's a genius!
That was actually one of her better breakups. Not a breakup. Anyway, let's bounce before any more monsters fall in love with me.
Even though it would have been a good transition, thanks to them, isn't the next episode we're talking about Ida's Requiem is. We don't get too many Ida-centered episodes, and the ones that we do, I don't really like the one with Gwendolyn, but this is one of them. Here, we are introduced to the amazing Rain Whisperers, and they are so good. Everything about them is just perfect, from their shy personality, how they introduce it to Bard Magic, and the relationship that they have with Ida. It's all just so mysterious and intriguing at the same time. The Bets team is really fun, and I wish we got to spend a bit more time with the characters. Ida's internal struggle that she's dealing with, the realization of King and Luz, that they're going to need to leave, it just feels so real, and it's so tragic. But my favorite part of the episode is Ida's Requiem, the song itself. It sounds so good, and is used in later episodes to such great effect. Even just Ida and Rain playing the song in this episode, it might be a top 5 scene for me. The side plot with King and Luz is interesting enough, though. And mainly at the end of the episode where King changes his name to Clawthorn, that's when I really began to like it. Also, Darius is so cool, such a great character, and we officially meet him in this episode for the first time, so extra points for that.
For I am Luce, the human, warrior of peace. Now eat this, sucker!
Reaching Out, it is one of the most simple but elegant episodes of the Owl House. It reminds me a lot of Enchanting Ground Fry, where it starts out as so simple, we get an amazing scene at the end, and a decent side plot. In the episode, it is the day that Luz's father dies, and she needs to deal with the grief of losing her father and all the memories of that. And then also she thinks about being separated from mom, because she normally spends the day with her mom. Luz tries to distract herself, though, so she doesn't need to think about it, and the perfect distraction comes when Amity wants to connect with her father by winning a tournament. So Luz goes along and ends up kind of taking things over just so she has something to do. Amity is frustrated at first, but once she learns what the day means to Luz and why Luz was acting like this, they just have such a wholesome scene. It's very sad. At the same time, Ida and Amity's brother make a truth potion while the brother deals with his feelings of being unrecognized. The episode, it's just so good. It's Lumity at its peak, where they are a loving relationship who are trying to help each other with the best of their abilities. This episode is emotional, wholesome, but also tragic.
This is the end.
And number 1 is Thanks to Them. This is one of the most tightly written, emotional, exciting, and well-paced episodes of television I have ever seen. I rewatched it 4 times, and it gets better each time. The intro, so good. People say it was a montage of all the canceled season 3 episodes, and honestly, if that's the case, I'm fine with it. I'm glad we didn't get too much time in the human world, because this show is based in the Boylan Isles, so let's stay there as much as possible. But that being said, every minute we did get in the human realm felt intentional, needed, and planned out. The episode felt like it had time to breathe, while also not wasting a single second. The trauma that we explored through Luz, Camilla, and Hunter, it was just so horrifying in different ways for each character. The video diary that Luz has, it makes me cry every time. The fight at the end looks so good, and each character just feels so fun in this episode. This episode is quite basic on a story level, but for its emotion, it becomes the best Owl House episode ever. It's just really, really good. But that is every episode of the Owl House ranked. There's a lot to consider with each episode. I may have forgotten certain side plots, and my list may slightly change with passing of time, but I'd say this is mainly how I feel. This list just shows how solid the show is. There are very few mediocre episodes, and there are so many that are just fun and emotional, exciting. I would love to hear your ranking on the Owl House, or at least your top best and worst episodes. For today's trivia, make sure and go rewatch all those credits, all those number things, and you tell me what episodes they're from. It took me so many hours choosing them, and now it's going to take you so many hours to find out.